Joining us now to discuss the safety devices market in South Africa is Tammy Whyman, MD of Strategy Practice Accenture SA. Now, Tammy, let's start off by you telling us basically what are these safety devices and why do people need them?
Yeah, well, I think it's more about devices and devices which are powered by technology, information, and devices that are mobile. So certainly there are a number of new applications, and one of the ones that features predominantly within the South African market is the interest in devices which are about personal safety or safety within vehicles, and there are numerous applications of these.
Well, give us a couple of examples of these.
Yes, so it's almost as far as you can stretch your imagination, as a matter of fact. Think about someone who is using their GPS on a mobile phone, for example, which would be an example of a phone, or excuse me, a device which can run various applications at the same time. You're driving, and at the same time, the city's surveillance system picks up some suspicious activity on one of the streets where you are going to be routed. Imagine that these systems are connected, you receive the information, the GPS automatically reroutes you, and at the same time you're wearing a watch which is monitoring your heart rate, your blood pressure, and knowing that you're going into a situation of possible risk, an alert is sent out to a possible ambulance who would be on call if your vital signs were somehow compromised. And this is not science fiction. This is something that we have the ability right now to put everything into play.
Gee.
Well, Tammy, the security industry in South Africa is expected to grow by about 8.7% this year to about 5.5 billion rand. Now, in your survey, you mentioned that a lot of homeowners are actually interested in devices that are for their homes. Why is that?
Well, we found that, as a matter of fact, 81% of South Africans would be interested in a device which would monitor their home. And it is not only about security, but it's about the interconnectedness. So you could have a device which is able to monitor not only if there's an intrusion, it could also monitor the uses of electricity, and even combine both. Imagine in the case of Oscar Pistorius, one of the key questions is, were the lights on before or after the incident took place? If you had a system which was enabling the home, you would be able to easily access that information and to understand the sequence of events.
What about the risks of privacy being invaded? And one thinks of all these signals being sent out, surveillance of you, perhaps most of the time dormant, but when something happens, the surveillance steps up. Aren't there issues there where your life is open to everyone if they know how to switch on the right device?
Yes. Certainly, it's always a concern, whether that is information about surveillance, whether it's information that you are offering up about yourself so that you're able to get a more relevant consumer offering. And we found that 50% of the respondents do have concerns about their information being used in a way which would, which would compromise their possible security or their personal information. But at the same time, more than 50% would be willing to exchange that information if they would get some sort of monetary reward. So that would be more on the consumer side, on the consumer applications.
Okay. Reward systems again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's an understanding that there's a benefit, but at this, it's about a 50-50 exchange.
Yeah. Interesting.
Let's also look at the growing market for health devices in South Africa. What's the reason behind that?
Yes, in South Africa we also observe that there's a very high level of interest in health devices which can monitor some of the vital signs and also help with training. And certainly my personal belief is that South Africans have such an interest in outdoor active lifestyle that this would be another benefit to them to help them in their training.
Well, I think you mentioned Oscar Pistorius, and that's very much on everyone's minds at the moment. When it comes to crime prevention, crime detection, crime solution, arrests of criminals, I've often thought that the cell phone companies, maybe I'm being unreasonable, could have done a lot more to provide access for the police to what's going on with the criminals. And I just don't believe it when someone steals your cell phone that they can't cancel it out and make it explode if necessary. But surely what you're talking about here could play a huge role in crime prevention and detection and so on.
Exactly. And it's about that prevention. The mobile companies are obliged to cooperate with police once an incident has happened. But here it's about prevention. And why are we able to understand and be able to predict what has happened? Technology is now able to process a large amount of data which is very unstructured, whether it's video surveillance, it's voice, and in the past that wasn't possible. But you need to be able to process real-time large amounts of information, detect the patterns, and be able to predict with a certain possibility that an event is about to occur. And that is the role that technology and mobile devices can play in preventing this. It's not after the fact that we're using these to try to piece together what happened in the event.
What are consumers' rights as far as making sure that this kind of technology does not, at the end of the day, infringe on their privacy? What are their rights? What is it that people can do to ensure that you don't find a video of yourself on YouTube, for example?
Yes, there are consumer protection acts, and I would just advise the consumers to be very conscientious. There are always terms and conditions. You need to deal with viable companies and know your rights and actually strive to protect them. There are always different levels which you can trade off. So again, if you would like to offer your information to a third party, understand the consequences of it, but also understand what the potential rewards are.